Hello, hi, and welcome to the Afro Mavericks. My name is Mapasikamura, and I'm here with Mighty Jamie. Today, we're discussing the impeachment trial of Donald Trump. So, Jamie, I think first off my head, I'm thinking, what is impeachment?
Right, so impeachment is the beginning of a process for the removal of a government official. It's the same as a formal accusation, or it's a form of indictment.
Okay.
So what it does is it triggers a trial of that particular official. If the trial leads to a conviction, that official is removed from their office, and if it leads to an acquittal, they continue to be in their office. So it's important to note that impeachment is not the same as removal from office, because I think sometimes there's a confusion about that. And it's a power of Congress.
Okay.
So Congress has this power to impeach, right? Now, the grounds for impeachment are the following: treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. So the trial process happens in Senate, and Senate acts as a judge and a jury. Forgot to start our time. It acts as a judge and a jury. That means it listens to the trial, the arguments as they are presented, and then also then deliberates. In order for there to be a conviction, you need to have a supermajority of votes, which is 67 votes. Now, the history of impeachment is as follows. There have been 60 investigations ever since the United States of America became a country. There have been 19 proceedings that have moved out of the investigation stage into actual impeachment proceedings. And there have been only 8 successful removals of officials, none of which have been presidents. There have been 3...
Wait, so you're saying Bill Clinton and Andrew were not actually removed, Andrew Johnson that is, were not actually removed as president, even though they were impeached?
Yeah, so exactly. That's exactly it. So there have been 3 impeachment proceedings that have led to an impeachment vote going through. Number 1 was in 1868 with Andrew Johnson. Number 2 was in 1999 with Bill Clinton, where he obviously lied about having sexual relations with that woman. And number 3 being Donald Trump in 2019. Right? There's a sidebar which we have to add, which is 1974, Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
So Nixon wasn't actually impeached. He resigned before the process could actually commence, because he realized that he was not going to get the support he needed.
Watergate was just too much.
Exactly. So of all of those 3, none of them has actually been a successful impeachment.
Yeah.
Now, the case for impeachment, or the foundings for impeachment, come from this set of papers written by constitutional fathers of the United States of America. They are called the Federalist Papers, and they are from 1788. And Alexander Hamilton, Jay, and Mason wrote them, and Hamilton was the strongest voice. Now, one of the critical things that Hamilton points out is that it's important for an impeachment to have credibility in order for that impeachment to have legitimacy. He points out in the Federalist Papers that the greatest danger is that the decision will be regulated more by the comparative strengths of parties than by the real demonstrations of innocence or guilt. Yeah. So what he's talking about here is that there is a need for there to be bipartisan support for an impeachment proceeding. If there is no bipartisan support, and it looks like it's just about which party is the most powerful in the House, that will undercut the credibility of the process. Now, his solution to that danger was to give Senate that particular power to hold the trial, because he viewed Senate to be a more sober body, one where people would have, less likelihood to act as a result of their political interests. However, as we can see, Hamilton's trust in the Senate is not one that has been tested out by the passage of time, because Senate is as partisan as Congress. But that's really what the impeachment is, what the trial is. And now, if you want to go through the timeline of this particular impeachment, the Donald Trump one that is at hand, the House Intelligence Committee started a process on the 3rd of November as a result of the whistleblower complaints that Donald Trump had abused power. It then moved to the House Judiciary Committee on the 4th of December, and Congress voted on party lines, mainly on the 18th of December. Now, Donald Trump then was impeached, and there were two articles of impeachment, one being abuse of power and the second being obstruction of Congress. And now what's happened is that what we saw last week is that the articles of impeachment were finally moved on to Senate, and Senate on Tuesday, which is going to be either, I guess, tomorrow, if this comes out on Monday, is going to begin the formal impeachment trial. And that's where we are right now.
All right. I guess just to get into the different players of the trial, who are the people in the Senate who are going to be taking part and what it's going to look like. So the first would be the House impeachment managers. These are all, would think of them as prosecutors, right? And these are all members of the House of Representatives. We've got 7 of them: Jerry Nadler, Sylvia Garcia, Val Demings, Adam Schiff, Zoe Lofgren, Hakeem Jeffries, and Jason Crow, right? So that's one side that's bringing the case, that's bringing the articles of impeachment, Article 1 and Article 2. And then on the other side would be Trump's defense. These are the people that are going to be protecting him and making his case. We've got House Counsel Pat Cipollone, Italian, right? We've got his private attorney, Jay Sakilo. I bet that pronunciation is wrong, but I tried.
Yeah.
Okay, so he also represented him during the whole Mueller investigation. So he's quite experienced with dealing or rather protecting Donald Trump. And then we've got the famous guys that he's bringing in. The first one would be Ken Starr, who was able to help spur Bill Clinton's impeachment. And then following that was Robert Ray, who then preceded him, who is another guy that will be coming in, and Alan Dershowitz.
Yes. So Alan is actually quite a famous
He is.
Harvard lawyer. And,
Yes.
Is he Harvard? Yeah, he's from Harvard.
He is.
Yeah. So Alan, he's made the case that this particular impeachment goes too far and sets a negative precedent for what constitutes an impeachment. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not Ken Starr, Dershowitz, and the rest of the legal team can actually work together, because there's a lot of firepower there, but it's not necessarily clear whether they have a cohesive legal argument. But that's basically where they're at right now.
Which also speaks to, television Trump. He got the most controversial lawyers to represent him. So it says a lot about him. You can never miss the drama with this man. So the third part would be the Senate, right? Who will be the jury in this case. They'll be sitting kind of sort of on the sideline. There's 100 of them. 53 are Republicans, 47 are Democrats. So that kind of also speaks to, the bipartisanism and how in the end this will roll out. Because if they need a supermajority of 67 to rid of him, and they already have a majority of 53 that's Republicans, that's unlikely. You need 20 people to deflect. 20 people. And that's highly unlikely.
Exactly. And I think if we dive in, just to let the viewers at home know. So we know who the people who don't like Donald Trump
We know who they are.
We know who they are. These are the people most likely to defect. So number one is Mitt Romney. Because if you recall, Mitt wanted to be president. And Donald Trump basically blocked his path because he lost to Obama. He thought he was going to come back and, beat Hillary, and that was going to be it. But in order to do that, he had to come through Trump. And Trump basically shut down any prospects for Mitt Romney to be able to come back. And then Mitt was on the sidelines attacking Donald Trump because he couldn't even run in the Republican race because he had been frustrated by Donald Trump. So he's a long-standing rival of Donald Trump. And a lot of times Mitt acts like he's doing it on principle. But I personally think that they have a vendetta. They have historic beef. So you've got Mitt Romney, then you've got Susan Collins of Maine. She got into a lot of trouble during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings because a lot of people were hoping she would vote with the Democrats, which she didn't. And now they're looking at her again, saying, "Listen, well, this time around you'll be punished in the electoral booth. You won't come back to Senate." So Susan Collins, Mitt Romney, very obvious defections. Romney from Utah, Susan Collins from Maine. Then you've got Ben Sassy from Nebraska.
Yeah.
And then you've got Lisa Murkowski. There we go.
Murkowski.
Lisa Murkowski
Look,
of
these
Alaska.
pronunciations are a lot.
We're not Americans.
We're not.
So, but Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Senator Lisa Murkowski, is one of the defections. But even if all 4 of them defect, that only gives the Democrats how many votes? That's 51.
16.
Yeah. I'm saying if they get 51 because they moved from 47 to 51, and nowhere near enough to get the votes that they need.
60 more people to deflect, and it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's going to be interesting just in the early stages is whether or not extra evidence will be allowed, and whether or not witness testimony will be allowed.
That's another one, because Susan Collins has said that, look, she is actually working on a deal to ensure that there will be witnesses. So that also speaks to the length of how she is an actual deflector in this case.
Exactly. So we can actually counter as vote 48 for the Democratic side, but it's not really going to lead to much of and this is where I have, like, if I were to think through one of my points, is this thing is a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
And it's a foregone conclusion that plays into the criticism that Alexander Hamilton had in the Federalist Papers, that it's going to be a partisan vote speaking to the majority of the power that each party has in the different chambers. So in Congress, this was a process which was rushed because they had the votes, so they could speed it along. And the Republicans voted consistently against, and now you're going to have a situation where Senate says, okay, you had your party, now it's our turn. That's going to undercut the legitimacy long term that the Democrats have for saying we were justified in doing this. And I think one of the things is that the Democrats have had a narrative that we want to impeach from the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, when Rashida Tlaib came in to Congress, the first thing that she said is we're going to impeach the motherfucker, right? And that was prior to there being a Ukraine process, there being a Mueller investigation.
When she was asked about the question, the very same question, she was like, but no, we can't just impeach a president.
Speaker Pelosi,
we need to see how things go before we can go that route.
Yeah, but listen, my point is, if you guys are already coming in saying we are going to impeach this guy, we're going to impeach him on day one, that undercuts your long-term credibility for saying we're not doing it for partisan reasons. And it does strengthen, the Trump rebuttal when he says, listen, these guys are sour that they lost the election, and they will try anything that is accessible to them to remove me from the presidency because they still want Hillary to have been the president. But unfortunately, that's not what happened.
Okay, but one can also argue that it's not just about the removal of Donald Trump. It can be to ensure that, because the elections are right here at our doorstep, it could be a measure to ensure that all the dirt comes out regarding Ukraine, etc., and ensure that they damage his reputation and his approval ratings.
Yeah, look, I actually think that this could have the opposite effect. I'll tell you why I say that. One, Donald Trump just needs his base plus a little extra to win this election. Now, his base is going to buy into the narrative that they are attacking Trump because they couldn't win. And as this impeachment process unfolds, during the electoral cycle, because you must remember that Iowa has its caucuses, I think, on the 3rd of Feb. And so a lot of this stuff is still going to be playing out while the trial is happening. You've got Iowa, you've got New Hampshire. Yeah. So now, on the one side, Trump's base will be strengthened. On the other side, the Democratic candidates are going to have their messaging diluted by the trial. So instead of the movie being just who gets to win, who are the candidates, is it Buttigieg, Biden, Warren, etc., now it becomes two shows. One is the impeachment show, the other is the Democratic primary race.
Also considering that there's senators there who actually have to be in the House.
Exactly. So they get undercut as well, because now it's going to underscore that it's the political agenda is going to be undercut, because is it 4 senators who are still running? You've got
Yeah.
Senator Senator what is it?
Elizabeth Warren.
Senator Warren.
Mm.
You've got Senator what's his name?
Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders, and then who else is a senator there who's still running?
The lady, the amazing
Is it,
lady with a lot of sauce.
Klobuchar. Amy Klobuchar.
Yes, yes.
So she's also a senator. So you've got these votes which are undercut, and then Cory Booker was running. He's dropped
He's out.
but he was a senator. I mean,
Yeah.
he is a senator. So now you've got 4 senators who have been contesting for the position, who are still going to be sitting as Trump's jurors and judges when they are conflicted, because this is a rival of theirs politically. So that's going
But
to...
also, one might argue this is their constitutional
No, it's
responsibility.
their job. It's their job. I'm
Yeah.
not contesting that it's their job. What I'm only saying at this particular point is that it's going to play into the narrative that favors Trump to his base. But on the inverse, you want, as a political candidate, all of the attention to be on you.
Mm.
Do you see what I'm saying? But in this particular instance, the attention then gets divided. Because one is the Donald Trump show and the other is your race.
Yeah.
Now you're going to lose some airtime because this is going to take up more oxygen in the media than Iowa, than New Hampshire. And now you get to run while the impeachment is happening, and you're not going to get as much attention as you could have got. And I think that's actually going to not help the Democrats, but actually be a disadvantage to them.
Okay. So finally, before we derailed and had an entire conversation, the final part would be the presiding officer, who is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. In this case, it's John Roberts. So he only sits if it's an impeachment trial of a president or a deputy president.
Yeah.
And that pretty much concludes our talk today. Anything you want to add?
So I think let's talk about one of the elements around this, which is interesting. I just need to find my note on it. And this is the actual case against Trump. Why does this case exist? Go for it.
Why does it exist?
Yeah, tell us. What do you know? Let's run through it.
In terms of, so I think in essence,
terms of why is there an abuse of power charge against Trump?
Yeah. So Donald Trump, we know that during the entire Russian election, right? I mean, U.S. elections.
Yeah.
Yes. There's this entire situation where Russia is meddling in the he's meddling in the
Okay, we're gonna cut this. All right.
Okay, no. So Ukraine, right? We've got a situation with Ukraine where Donald Trump is withholding military aid, right? And a meeting with the White House finally got to it.
All right, let's pause because we lost. No, don't pause the video. Don't press.
Why not?
No, because we're gonna mess up the sound. We just need to pause so that we can recollect it. So I think ask about the charges, and then I'll lead us into that.
I was thrown off.
It's fine.
Also,
I'm trying to
like I said, just a side note, what I want you to do
Is look at the camera.
Sorry? No. Besides, yes, look at the camera. You're very right. You don't look at the camera. But another important note, I want you to speak slower. You tend to speak a little bit too fast.
Okay, so it's fine. It's fine.
Like, take your time and just take your time.
It's fine. So let's go now to just ask me what are the charges, then I'll run us through them. Just take us through the charges. Wait, let me find my note. I need to find the note here. Okay, I'm good, I'm ready.
Are you good?
Okay, I'm ready.
Oh, I'm not. She's coughing. I'm like, you good?
What did you tell me you were going to ask me about the charges?
I thought you were on it. Like,
I am, but I was so thrown off.
I think you need to write some of your stuff on paper.
Yes,
The screen is too
I mean,
small.
it's right here. Trump is accused of being...
Okay, let's get back into it. Right, let's talk about the charges.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Go. I'm gonna. Remember, I'll cut this part in the editing. I know that this is there, but now you're wasting the time. But let's get back into it.
Okay, so there are two different charges here, right? Abuse of power, right, which speaks to the Ukraine saga, holding out on a White House meeting, and also holding...
Just ask me and I'll run it through, then we'll talk about it, because you're messing it up.
How am I messing it up?
You'll see the difference.
Okay, all right, so there are two charges that Trump is facing. One, abuse of power, and the second one is obstruction of Congress. What is that?
So looking at the abuse of power one, there's an amount of money that was supposed to go to Ukraine for military aid, and this amount is $391 million US. What is the money supposed to be used for? It was basically supposed to be used to bolster the Ukrainian defense, because you remember there was this issue with Crimea and Russia. So people view Russia in America as the enemy and Ukraine as an ally. So to help the ally, they were supposed to get this amount of money. Money. Right?
Funding.
Funding, yes. There you go. So they're supposed to get this money, $391 million US.
Yeah.
So Donald Trump then says, no, don't give them that money. We need something in return for that money before we get them that money. So then he pressures Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden for the corrupt appointment of his son and incidences around that. And he says that, listen, that's what you need to do. And in order for us to give you the money, we need to get that investigation going. So then the Ukrainian President Zelensky says, I'm going to do that. Right? So now the charge is that he enlisted a foreign government to help him win his campaign in 2020, because this investigation on Joe Biden obviously would then lead to Joe Biden being implicated one way or another.
Yeah.
Now, to go into the merits of this particular case, when Joe Biden was vice president, he was in charge of overseeing Ukraine. Now, there was a prosecutor called Viktor Shokin who was fired as a result of American pressure. And in 2018, Joe Biden actually did say that he was responsible for the firing of this prosecutor. And after the prosecutor was fired, Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, was not investigated. So there is a little bit of credence to the corrupt activities happening here, and there being some case for Hunter Biden to possibly answer. Who is Hunter Biden? Hunter Biden is Joe Biden's son. He's a very controversial guy.
Yeah.
He was discharged from the Navy for drug use. And there have been many reports of him not only abusing alcohol, but also abusing all of the narcotics. He's famous for being a narcotic fan. So he's a controversial character. He was appointed to this gas company in Ukraine called Burisma. Now, Burisma was paying him $50,000 US per month for a job at the company. So obviously, nobody gets paid $50,000 US. This is basically Duduzane Zuma type of appointments. $50,000 US a month is a lot of money. It's 750,000 rands per month for working for this gas company. So obviously, this appointment was to try to, butter favor with the political leadership. It must be said, though, that Donald Trump's sons have also benefited from these kind of cushy deals. So Trump is not the kind of guy who should be able to get onto the moral high ground and say, what the hell is happening with Joe Biden's son?
Yeah.
But this is what happened. And Joe Biden's son has been involved in other dodgy deals in the early 2000s, where he was involved in some venture equity firms which are doing dodgy things. So he's not necessarily a squeaky clean guy. So Trump then says, listen, Viktor Shokin was fired before he could investigate Joe Biden. Can we get an investigation rolling into Hunter Biden and whether or not Shokin's firing was illegitimate? And then he then says, and this is where the charge comes, that we're not going to give you the money until you institute that investigation. So the Democrats are saying the withholding of the money is the problem. Now Trump is saying, well, I was investigating corruption. That's my job as a president. Why are you tripping? Okay. That's basically that. Now, when it comes to the second charge of obstruction of justice, remember this went through the Judiciary Committee and the Investigations Committee first, the Intelligence Committee, then the Judiciary Committee. Trump basically blocked a lot of witnesses, such as John Bolton, who was involved in that time.
Who might actually be returning.
Exactly. And he used executive privilege. Now, executive privilege is a power that the President of the United States and several other high-ranking officials have to maintain, under certain circumstances, their communications as confidential. Yeah. So they are not obliged to disclose those particular communications as a result of having this privilege. So Trump has said, listen, I have executive privilege. None of these people are going to appear. Yeah. And he's actually going to rely on this in some instances even in the trial. And this
Yes.
is why those rules of will witnesses be allowed actually matter. But also, the Republicans have said if we allow witnesses, we will also call in witnesses who will implicate Joe Biden and Hunter Biden to prove that there was actually a case
Of
to
corruption.
answer
Yeah.
and that Trump was justified in doing what he was doing. What do you think about all of this?
I think it's just interesting the fact that Donald Trump, or rather the leader of the Republicans, Mitch, will be able to keep out the witnesses. There's there's 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
White House aide Bob Blair, acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney.
Yeah. Mulvaney,
Hello.
I think is how they pronounce it. There you go.
Yeah, right. Office of Management and Budget official Michael Dufresne and
Yeah.
former National Security Advisor John Bolton. I think
Yeah.
it'll be interesting if Mitch McConnell is able to keep them out. And I think that's my concern, that these people have so much to say. And that's where the evidence is. How do you conclude an entire impeachment trial without people with actual evidence presenting that evidence? So I think that it would be an injustice if they don't have the platform, or rather are not able to sit down and say, look, this is what we have, this is what you can use to actually impeach.
I mean, but ultimately, do you think this matters if it's a foregone conclusion from
Yeah.
the beginning? Do you think that all of the resources, energy, time, media circuits actually matters when you think about this particular? Because we know they're not going to get the 67 votes. We know it's going to be a partisan vote, as it was in the House of Representatives. So what does it matter? Because you're not going to actually get what you're going to get.
I think, like I said before, it's not just about getting rid of Donald Trump. It's also about going after his character. It's going after his
But this
approval
guy said he was
ratings.
going to grab women by the,
Yes, but it's
by their best bits.
I
mean, people already know that he's a vile man.
Exactly, but this might be a defense that, look, actually your president is corrupt.
Let me ask you. Do you
Especially if the evidence that these 4 people bring actually justifies
do you
these
think
2
that
articles.
Do you think that Donald Trump's voters care more that he withheld 300 million that he eventually gave to Ukraine than they care about building the wall, than they care about all of the things that Donald Trump has promised them? Do you think that this stuff matters? Because if people are saying, look, we're going to expose Trump, we're going to show you how dodgy he is.
As a
know.
president this
yeah,
time.
but they know.
in his capacity?
They know he just
As
attacked
Commander-in-Chief.
Iran. He just attacked Iran on very shaky grounds. He bombed Soleimani and took him out. Do you think that this matters to the average Republican in a sense that it will shift his support base? Because if he's able to maintain his base while Democrats are still struggling to find who their leader is, by the time they get that stuff together, it may not even matter.
I think they have a chance if the Democrats can be able to reach outside of Donald Trump's base, because it's not just about his base. His base is not the entire of the U.S. So if they're able to rally support, especially from young people, how Obama was able to win the election.
But they don't have
then
an
they have
Obama.
a chance. Then they have a chance.
But they
They've
don't
got-
have an Obama.
Look, I think Elizabeth Warren is quite...
Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren
quite
is
just-
not
Bernie
even
Sanders,
leading in any polls
Bernie
right now.
Sanders is old, but he also has support from young people. So I think if they can be able to mobilize young people
But
on their side...
Biden
then
is
it's quite-
leading the polls for Iowa, for New Hampshire, and he doesn't look like he can, because Biden is losing his train of thought mid-debates. He's
He
not
is, I
able
saw
to
that.
make a coherent argument
It's
most of the
maybe
time.
he's tired.
But
I
is he going to
think
be
he might
able
be
to go
exhausted.
toe-to-toe
With Donald Trump.
in a debate
But
without
then
looking shaky?
you're acting as though Donald Trump actually has pragmatic,
But he
constructive
performed
answers.
better in the debates than Joe Biden is in the debates. I'm saying Donald Trump versus Hillary. Donald Trump was making a coherent case. He was still Donald Trump, but he was able to stick to his talking points and deliver his case. Now, if Joe Biden forgets stuff, he meanders and talks all kinds of stuff and isn't coherent in the debate, how is he going to be able to beat Donald Trump? And that's why I'm saying you may not have an Obama in this particular race, which means that all Trump really needs to do is to galvanize his base and win those critical states that he did. Because you mustn't forget, over 50 million people voted for Trump. It's not like nobody voted for him. And Hillary beat him, but by about, 3 to 6 million people? We'll check it and correct it in the comments.
Votes, yeah.
In the popular votes. But Trump did still have 50 million people voting for him. Now, will Joe Biden be able to get the same 56 million that Hillary Clinton was able to get?
I think it'll be interesting to see, but I think Bernie Sanders said something really interesting in the last debate of the Democrats, and he said, look, if I am out, right, I'm going to ensure that I really support for whichever Democratic candidate that's going to come out of this. So I think that speaks to if every single candidate that was on that stage in that debate, even the ones that your Kamala Harris that left even before that, I think they can be able to galvanize and mobilize enough people to stand for and come and vote for that Democrat. I don't think it's a given that Donald Trump, which he'll be able to, he won't be removed, right? But I think at the end of the day, it's very, very possible that with the support of the other candidates, whoever that is the final Democratic candidate, they can mobilize that support if they want.
Well, I think we're out of time. Let's leave it here. And then hopefully this was educational for you. Hopefully you understand impeachment, the trial, and all of those things. We want to encourage you to also contribute content to us. If you want us to cover a topic that you think maybe isn't being covered by mainstream or isn't being discussed enough mainstream, please put it in the comment section. We're happy to consider it and add it to our roster. Subscribe to the channel, like the channel, take part, join our social media interactive pages. We've got a Facebook, we've got a Twitter, we're going to set up a WhatsApp. We're just going to have this vibe. We want it to be a knowledge community, debate community. Let's have these conversations. So it's been another good episode, I hope, from the Afro Mavericks. Till the next one, peace.